I'm a girl who loves thriller books, horror books, and dark academia books. Not really romantasy girly, but recently I've read Powerless by Lauren Roberts and I was really shocked. This was not at all what I thought it would be. So if you want to watch a spoiler-free review of this book, please keep watching. Hi everyone, I hope you're all doing well. For those of you that don't know me or maybe you're new here, hi, my name is Charlene and this is my little channel where I talk mainly about books, but also with a little bit of travel and lifestyle as well. And this week I want to talk to you about Powerless by Lauren Roberts. Hi everyone, I hope you're all doing well and that you've had a good week. Thank you so much for being here. As I said in my little intro there, I'm going to be giving you a spoiler-free review of Powerless by Lauren Roberts today. But before I get into it, I want to give you a couple of quick details about the book, starting with the blurb. So let me just read you this. Only the extraordinary belong in the kingdom of Ilya. The elites have possessed powers for decades, gifted to them by the plague, while those born ordinary are just that, banished from the kingdom of Ilya and shunned from society. No one knows this better than Payden Grey, an ordinary posing as a psychic to blend in with the elites. When she unsuspectingly saves one of Ilya's princes, Kai Azar, she's thrown into the purging trials, a brutal competition showcasing the elite's powers. If the trials and the opponents within them don't kill her, the prince she's fighting feelings for will, if he discovers what Payden is, completely ordinary. So that was the blurb there. But I want to give you a few little other details as well off of Goodreads, because I always think that that's like a good test of how well the book has been received. So the average rating for Powerless on Goodreads is 4.17. And also, does it say on here? Yes, it's got 523 pages. So Powerless is classed as a romantasy book, which is, if you've never heard of that before, although I'm sure you would have done, it's like a combination of romance and fantasy. And also it's classed as a YA book, so that's young adult. So I didn't know that before going into it, and if I'd known that, I probably wouldn't have read it, because romantasies aren't really my thing enough as it is, let alone YA. But I'm so glad that I didn't know that, because, spoiler alert, I really enjoyed this much more than I thought that I would. But let me not get too ahead of myself, because I first want to talk to you a little bit more about the plot, about the characters, about the themes of the book, and I also want to give you my thoughts and feelings and my overall review of it. So just to say as well, I'm not really a person who reads much fantasy or romantasy. I typically speaking read a lot of thrillers, horrors and dark academia books. They're kind of my favourite genres. But I'd recently been craving reading some fantasy, and while I've read a few that I've really enjoyed, I didn't really know much what to look for, because there are so many different fantasy books out there. And I also find some fantasy books can be a really confusing, overwhelming thing, because they get so deep into whatever world they've created that you don't know what anything is. You don't know the names of anything, you don't know the places, you don't know, like, do you know what I mean? Like, it's like as if you read Game of Thrones from the very beginning, you'd be a bit overwhelmed by the sheer amount of characters and the different areas of all these lands and things like that. So I didn't want anything like that. I didn't want anything too in-depth, but I did want something fantasy. Really, one of the only things that I've even recently read that's within the kind of fantasy era is the ACOTAR books. And I say books, I've only read the first one yet. But I really enjoyed reading that. And so I thought, I could go on to the second book of that, but that is super long. So I started looking for something else, and Powerless came up again and again. And people were talking about how much they loved it. So this is actually a romantasy book, not just fantasy. So romantasy is obviously romance and fantasy. So I wasn't sure at first whether this book would be for me, because I'm not much of a romance reader, and also because I really don't like books that have too much spice in them, if you know what I'm saying. It just makes me feel awkward and uncomfortable, and I'm probably a complete prude, but I just can't be bothered to read loads of spice. But this kept coming up within the kind of no spice or less amount of spice kind of category, so I thought I'd give it a go. People spoke so highly of it, so that's what led me to read Powerless in the first place. So this book kind of reminded me of a mashup between Hunger Games, between the Harry Potter film, the one with Charles, which one was that? The Goblet of Fire, and also a little bit of Fourth Wing. It was like all of those things combined in my mind in like a fantasy world, kind of like ACOTAR. So if you like any of those things, I think you'll really love this book. But just to talk to you a little bit more about the plot. We start in a town called Lut, which is part of a bigger kingdom called Ilia. So there are different types of people. There are ordinaries, there are people who don't possess any powers at all. There are mundanes, people who possess small powers like being psychic or little things like that that aren't too great of a power. And then there are elites. So these people have greater powers, or they have a much more like higher up status in society. So we start in Lut, and there's a character called Paydin Grey. So Paydin Grey lives in the slums of Lut, and she is an ordinary. She has no powers. She is pretty much on her own apart from her best friend, and she's just thieving for a living and just trying to get by. She's just trying to survive life in the slums. When one day something very unexpected happens to her, which basically leads her to being nominated to take part in these things called the purging trials. So the purging trials reminded me a little bit of the trials that take place in Hunger Games or in Fourth Wing. So something that happens annually, and within Powerless, this is the 6th annual purging trials. So she gets thrown into these purging trials, and she really has no choice in the matter. While these trials are taking place, she gets shipped out from the slums to the kingdom of Ilia. So she gets to live within the castle with the king and all of the other contestants and the princes. And from there, this is about her trying to survive these purging trials, trying to not show anybody that she is an ordinary, because if you're an ordinary, that you pretty much are an outcast of society and you pretty much get killed. So she's trying to convince everybody that she is a mundane and that she has powers. She's trying to survive these purging trials, which as in something like Fourth Wing or Hunger Games, per trial the numbers go down and down and down until there's just one person left surviving who will win. So she's trying to survive all of this, while at the same time she meets somebody, I'm not going to give too much away about who, but she meets somebody within these trials that she starts to develop feelings for. And at first she thinks this person is a complete idiot. It's a complete fool, and she doesn't like this person at all. But the more that she spends time around this person, it kind of develops from an enemies to lovers storyline. While all of that is also going on, there is also another storyline kind of bubbling beneath the surface of everything that's been happening in this kingdom of Ilia. The king that rules this kingdom is not a very pleasant man at all, and he has 2 sons who are the princes, who are much better people than him, but they still have their good and bad parts. The king has a rebellion kind of rising up against him because of all of the damage that he's caused to the slums, to the ordinaries, and to a certain extent the mundanes as well. And just the way he's ruling, people are not a fan of. So while all of these other things are taking place, and these trials are taking place, you've also got this kind of like bubbling undercurrent of this rebellion rising up as well. So that's as much I want to tell you about the story without giving too much away. But I would say the main components of this story, at the same time kind of running alongside of each other, are the kind of romance element along with the element of the trials itself, which, like I said, reminds me very much of Hunger Games, Fourth Wing, Goblet of Fire, things like that. So that's really probably as much as I can tell you about the plot itself without giving too much away. So to move on and talk to you a little bit about the characters, so we have some main characters in this book. Number 1, we have a character called Paydin Grey, who I was just talking to you about. She is a silver-haired ordinary who lives in the slums of Lut. She is a thief, and she has to get by as well as she can in life, thieving and being dishonest and basically just trying to survive. So she lives in the slums with her best friend Adina, and they just make the best of a bad situation, but they are really finding life really, really hard and very unfair. The way that they've been treated is absolutely not okay and so unfair. So that's Paydin Grey is one of our main characters. Adina, her best friend, is another one of those main characters, and she is a seamstress. So she is a person who is also living in the slums, but she's trying to get by making clothes for anybody that can afford them, really, and that is her real passion, is to make clothes. So other than that, the main characters are the king who is ruling Ilia. Like I was just explaining to you, he's not a very much liked man, but he is a very feared man. He rules with an iron fist, and he has created all sorts of havoc in the kingdom of Ilia, and he basically doesn't want there to be any ordinaries or anybody that he can't really control very easily, and he just wants there to be the elite, and that's it. He's got two sons called Kit and Kai Azza. So Kit is the prince who is going to be king after the king passes away. So he's very regal. He takes after his dad, the king, in some ways, but he's a much kinder, softer version. But he's still going to be king one day, so he's got that kind of kingly side to him. And then you've got Kai Azza. So Kai is the other son of the king, and he is the complete opposite of what Kit is. While Kit is like a dirty, blonde-haired, regal, royal, due to be king person, Kai is the complete opposite of that. He is tall and broad and muscular, and he's a fighter, and he's got dark black hair and grey eyes, and basically he is called an enforcer. So while you've got the king and Kit, who's going to be the king, you've got Kai, who is in the enforcer, who is basically the brawns of the situation, the right-hand man to the king, that is just basically making sure that no one messes with the royal family, because he is the enforcer. So he puts people in their place and delivers the punishments as it's needed. Other than that, character-wise, you've got all of the other people who take place within the trials. Some of them are elites. Some of them have slightly lesser powers, like the mundanes, and you've got a few people that live within the kind of confines of the castle and the grounds as well, that are quite central to the storyline. But I don't want to give you too much information about them specifically, because I think it might give away too much of what happens. But those, I think, are our main characters, and yeah, those are the main people that I wanted to point out in Powerless. So just to quickly touch on some of the themes of this book as well, like I keep saying, this really made me think a lot of Hunger Games and those kind of trials that happen within Hunger Games. It also reminded me of Fourth Wing for the same reason, and Harry Potter, the Goblet of Fire for the same reasons. So this very much centres around that kind of, that theme of survival of the fittest almost. They've got these challenges that they're just trying to survive through, and at the end there will be one winner. As well as that, the other main theme of the book is romance. It's very heavy on the enemies to lovers storyline. Other than that, you've got themes of things like friendship and injustice, there's grief, there's death, there's all sorts of little nuances, but I would say those two things are the main kind of themes that are running throughout the book. But yes, it really does live for me in that fantasy world with like Hunger Games and things like that, with all of those trials and challenges. So moving on now to my thoughts and feelings and opinions about Powerless by Lauren Roberts. I have to say that when I first picked up this book, I really didn't have much hope for it, because, like I said, either I find fantasy to be one of those things where it's too overcomplicated and there's too much going on and too much that I can't understand, or it's one of those things where it's a bit cringe and a bit tacky and I just don't buy it. But Powerless really did surprise me. I enjoyed this so much more than I thought I was going to. As I do most of the time when I read a book, I also downloaded it on Audible as well. So sometimes I was reading it and sometimes I was listening to it. And I really enjoyed my time reading and listening to it, so much more than I thought that I would. One thing that I really didn't think that I'd enjoy was the romance part of it, just because I'm not a romance reader. And I find romance to sometimes be a little bit tacky and a little bit cringe and just not for me. And I have to say, I do really enjoy the romance storyline that runs through this book. However, I'm not going to say that there weren't cringy bits, because some of the dialogue, some of the things that the characters say to each other, they are a bit cringe at times, but I didn't even mind, because it was more in a kind of like playful, tongue-in-cheek, I know I'm being a bit cringe way. So because it was like that, I didn't mind too much. But yeah, some of the dialogue was a little bit cringe, but not enough for me to not enjoy it and not enough for me to stop reading it. I absolutely loved the elements of the book that were more in the kind of fantasy world. So the things about the trials and the challenges and the purging trials, I really loved. While I was reading it, I could very clearly imagine the towns, or the town of Loot, of Ilya, of all of the areas where these challenges took place. I thought they were so well described that I really could imagine it very clearly in my head. I can imagine the characters very clearly in my head as well. And I feel very much like, as cringe as they were at times, I feel very much like I know them and I'm kind of invested in them and their story now. So I really did enjoy those elements of the book. I kind of touched a little bit on a rebellion kind of element to the story, and I really enjoyed that too. It reminded me of something like that you'd see in Harry Potter or V for Vendetta or something like that, and I really love that storyline. It really shocked me in places as well. There were a few points in this book where something happened where I didn't expect it to, and I loved that. I want to be shocked by it. I don't want it to just be a straightforward romance story, which absolutely wasn't. Another thing that I loved about this book was that it was light and easy to read. Sometimes I find when you're reading fantasy, there's so many words and things that you just can't understand because they're made up, that you're like, what on earth is going on here? But I didn't feel like that at all when I was reading Powerless. I thought it was really easy to follow, really easy to read. It felt really light to read as well, which was great because I'm a person who reads quite a lot of like thrillers, dark academia books, mystery books, horror books, things like that, which can be a bit heavy. So this felt like a bit of a kind of like palate cleanser, and it felt very light and easy to read. And I really, really enjoyed it. You can probably tell from the way that I'm speaking about it that I really did enjoy it so much more than I thought that I was going to the point where as soon as I finished Powerless, I went out and bought the next two books. So I bought Powerful, which is like, this is 1 in the storyline, Reckless is 2 in the storyline, and this is like 1.5. Do you know what I mean? It's like, this is not actually like a part of the storyline that you absolutely have to read, but this gives a different version of events that happen in Powerless from another character's perspective. So because I enjoyed Powerless so much, I literally finished this one night, and then I went out the next day and I bought Powerful, which is 1.5, and Reckless, which is 2. So I'm really excited to get onto these books. I've started reading Powerful already. I've got Reckless, and there are another 2 books in the series, Fearless and Fearful. I've ordered Fearless, and then I will buy Fearful when I see it. So I think the fact that I read 1 book and then I went out and bought pretty much the rest minus 1 book shows you something. So yeah, I really did enjoy this much more than I thought that I would. And as soon as I finished Powerless, I was like, but I've got to carry on. I've got to find out what happens. Like, it leaves on kind of like a really epic cliffhanger, which I just wasn't expecting. So I really felt like I had to get on to the next book, like as soon as I'd stopped reading this one. So like I said, the fact that I went out and bought the other books, and I've got some more coming, and I wanted to stay into this world, I think speaks volumes. I'm usually a person that will, like, once I've read a fantasy book or something, I'll go on to something completely different so it doesn't like seem too similar in my head. But I wanted to stay in this world, and literally the second that I stopped reading this, I bought the others. So, and I'm reading them straight away as well, which again is a big thing for me. I'd usually be like, oh, I'll read this some other time and I'll get onto something else on my TBR. But I started Powerful last night, and I've got Reckless here, and like I said, I've got the others on the way as well. So I'm really looking forward to reading this whole series. This ends on, I'm not going to say it was like something completely unexpected, but it was definitely on a very epic cliffhanger. So where this left off, I was like, I've got to carry on. I've got to find out what happens now. And I am kind of invested in the characters as well. Like, as tacky and as cringe as some of the things that they say sometimes are, I've really bought into the characters themselves, like who they are as people. And there's the romance storyline, I'm really interested in seeing where it goes, because it's not gone to plan, basically. So I really want to see what happens with all different elements of the storyline. The characters I'm really interested in. I just want to stay in this world. And you can probably tell from the way I'm speaking, but I've enjoyed this so much more than I thought that I would. So my overall rating for Powerless was 4 out of 5 stars. And in my rating system, 4 out of 5 stars means very good. 5 is absolute perfection. You can't get any better. So 4 out of 5 stars, very good. I'm still very impressed with this book. And who knows, maybe as I read the rest of the books, that rating might go up. But for now, I'm on a 4.5 for Powerless by Lauren Roberts. As well, I did just want to mention there's some really beautiful sentences and some beautiful language in this book. Sometimes you're so like lost in the fantasy or the romance element that something is described in such a way, or that a sentence kind of comes out of nowhere that you're like, whoa, oh my god, that was beautiful. And I just thought the imagery was beautiful. I thought the way that I could imagine everything it's just like a world that I want to stay in for a little while, and I was really pleasantly surprised with it. But if you've read Powerless or any of the series, please let me know what you thought, spoiler free of course, in the comments. I'm really looking forward to getting on to the other books, so I will give you my opinion of those as well. But yeah, I would really suggest Powerless if you're looking for like a romantasy or a fantasy or a palate cleanser or something easy to read. This took me next to no time to read, and I'm a slow reader, so I really enjoyed reading it, and yeah, I can speak very highly of it, so I'm very glad that I read it in the end. But if you've read any of the books or if you've read the whole series, let me know what you thought in the comments. Also, calling all romantasy and fantasy readers, if you have any suggestions of romantasy or fantasy books or series I absolutely have to get round to, please let me know. Like I said, this is an area that I'm not that familiar with. Really, the only things I can think of that I've read within this kind of world is ACOTAR, and I only read the first book. I do really want to read the others, and I do have them, but the second book is really long and it's scaring me. So I haven't got round to it yet, but I definitely will because I really enjoyed the first book. But other than that, really, I don't tend to read very much fantasy or definitely not romantasy at all. So I need your suggestions. If you have any suggestions for me, then please let me know in the comments. If you know that I've enjoyed Powerless and I'm moving on to the rest of this series, does that give you any other ideas? Is there anything that you think I should read? When I go into Waterstones or WH Smith or bookshops in general, I see the beautiful tables and displays of all the fantasy and romantasy books, and they look absolutely gorgeous and stunning, but I never know which one should I go for. I don't know which ones just look beautiful and which ones are actually better than the others. So please do let me know if you have any suggestions. I will stop rambling now and leave it there for today, but thank you so much for watching my video. I appreciate you so much, and I would love you forever if you would like this video and subscribe to my little channel. Chat to me in the comments. I absolutely love chatting to you guys, and please do subscribe because I've got some very fun, very exciting, very different videos coming up, which I cannot wait for, and I cannot wait to show you. It'd be something completely different. So if you want to see what those things are going to be, please do subscribe. Thank you again so much for being here and for watching this video, and I will see you very soon in my next video. Thanks for watching. Bye!